Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden. I'm the host of this program, and it should be pretty obvious that many years ago, I went to Mount St. Joseph. Well, here we are, the last month of the year 2020, and it's a year which is going to change what we call normal into an entirely different setup. It's going to have to, the way we're having problems coping with COVID-19. Now, just this past weekend, 68 more Vermonters were diagnosed with COVID-19, and unfortunately, 2 people died. And the numbers that are hospitalized from this are increasing. I believe there's something like 6 or 7 that are in intensive care. So it's with us. It's on the move, and this holiday weekend, of course, it's spiking all over the country. People traveling, even though the experts said, stay home, small group. Thousands of people ignored that warning, and they had their family gatherings and so forth and so on. And this past Sunday was one of the largest days of travel that we have had in a long time. So there's going to be a spike in the number of people that are going to be coming down with us. And you wonder, is there an end in sight? Well, there are at least 3 and maybe 4 pharmaceutical companies that have vaccines that are ready to be tested and seek the approval of the Centers for Disease Control. And of course, the first people that will be vaccinated are going to be those that are on the front line, the nurses and doctors and all the medical personnel that are coming close contact with people that have COVID-19. And of course, after that, I would imagine will be, people in nursing homes and assisted living, and public servants like your police, firemen, people like that. But it is on the move, and it doesn't show any signs of decreasing. It's not only in this country, it's throughout the world. Europe is being hit extremely hard with this COVID-19. And we look around our country, and it's unbelievable the way this thing is growing. States like California, Texas, and now pretty much in the Midwest, in the Dakotas. A lot of places where the governors and the people have sort of ignored this thing, or sort of figured it was a hoax, and that word comes from the dum-dum that was in the White House, and did not take the necessary precautions to protect the civilian population. In other words, they failed in their obligations to fulfill all of the duties of their elective office. Fortunately, in this state, I think Governor Phil Scott has done a very great job in keeping this thing under control. Well, people are saying, well, what about our economy? Now, well, folks, the economy won't make much difference if everybody's dead. It'd be great for the funeral business, if even they are alive, to do the burial. But we've got to get some kind of control on this thing. We're in fairly good shape here in the Rutland area, although one of our convalescent homes, something like 14 to 18 people, and 8 of the staff tested positive for COVID. And at least 3, maybe 4 people that were in that nursing home died from COVID-19. You look back in history and some of the great epidemics that have really disseminated the population. We go back to 1918, the conclusion of World War I, what became the Spanish flu. Well, the Spanish flu, of course, grew mainly from rats, and many of our soldiers that were overseas in the trenches, and trenches were filled with rats. And they contacted this disease, and of course they brought it home, and it spread. And it was a pandemic, no question about that. And you go back in history further, many of our Native American tribes, more of them were killed by the smallpox epidemic than by battling the white men and others encroaching on their homeland. And the vast majority of them died because of smallpox, and they had no way of counteracting it. First of all, they didn't know what it was. They didn't have the means to counteract it. And the smallpox killed off more Native Americans than they lost in their tribal battles against the advancing white settlers. And we go back in history, we go back to the bubonic plague, which ravaged Europe back in the Middle Ages, and the Black Death, which lasted a grand total of close to 100 years before they finally got something to get it under control. And we've seen other pandemics spreading through Africa, parts of Asia. But this COVID-19 is worldwide, and it's probably the greatest pandemic in the history of the world. And it's going to reduce our population by millions, absolutely millions. And it's doing that already. The way to cut down on it, wear a face mask. Isolate, stay 6 feet apart. Take precautions. This is going to become the new norm. Now, because of the Thanksgiving holiday and the number of people that travel and really didn't use precautions over this holiday season, many of our schools here in the state of Vermont are shutting down. Here in Rutland City, schools are closed, public schools are closed for a week. Here's the number of teachers that will be out. And the students too, I would imagine, because they have tested positive on this COVID-19 thing. It's a lot of people not following the guidelines. You know, if you would listen to the experts, the medical experts, as President-elect Biden has promised to do, somewhere along the line we're going to get this thing under control before the total population is virtually wiped out. But how things are going to shape up in the future, there are going to be some drastic changes. They're going to have to be to cope with this thing. Look at all the people. Let's look at the education situation. Real learning for the vast majority of people is not taking place, and it can't. And say, well, you can do it on your computer, you can do it on Zoom. But that is coming up short. It's coming up short. Education really takes place. It's the interrelationship between the teacher and the student, that face-to-face relationship, person to person. And you don't have that when you have Zoom or your computer or some other means. It's got to be that personal contact. And you look at all the schools that had to shut down in March last year, and these kids graduated, and you wonder how well prepared they are going to be to go on to college or go on to a new profession or learn a new profession at their age. In the situation this year, when schools are open for a while, then they got to shut down. And the whole educational situation has got to be evaluated and how we're going to handle it. Your colleges that are shut down, things that have to be canceled because people have been careless, have not followed guidelines. And as I've said before, one of the things I think we're going to have to do is flip-flop the school year. Begin in March, wrap it up after Thanksgiving or sometime in December. The summer vacation will become a thing of the past. Instead, the kiddies will have winter vacation. There's a lot of your classes you're not going to have, won't be able to have the usual classroom setting. A lot of your classes are going to have to be outdoors. Field trips, which are something special now, are going to become a regular routine. And the idea of it is going to be the teacher taking the students and taking them places and lecturing them there and trying to instill in them the desire to learn more, to improve, to look on. A lot of your class is going to have to be outdoors. Probably at least 60% of your classes are going to have to be outdoors. And I think it's going to work better in a lot of cases. If you're a history teacher, around here there are a lot of examples on the Revolutionary War, especially in the Champlain Valley. You have Isle La Motte, the scene of the first, well, at least from the French side, the first settlement up in Isle La Motte, the first fort, which is Fort St. Anne, built by the French. It's from where Samuel de Champlain launched his little cruise down the lake that he named after himself, and with his big blunderbuss or whatever they called it in those days, he was able to help them defeat a rival band of Mohawk Indians, mainly by killing them off with a gun, scaring the hell out of them when that thing went off. Well, of course, we know that the French built a number of forts. There's Fort Royal up near West Addison. They populated the Champlain Islands. Big fort they built to try and stymie the English was Fort Ticonderoga, which still stands today. That time was called Fort Carillon. After the British captured it in the War of the French and Indian War, they changed the name to Ticonderoga. Here in Vermont, we have Mount Independence in Orwell. Originally, that mountain was known as Rattlesnake Hill because of the large population of rattlesnakes that exist in that part of the state, down through Orwell, and Denson, West Haven, especially West Haven. And we go further north, up in the Burlington area. Well, even before we get there, going up along the eastern shores of Lake Champlain, there's an area in Ferrisburg where Benedict Arnold pulled in to build more small boats to help him slow down the British advance coming down Lake Champlain down towards Saratoga. Actually, their goal was New York City, but as we know, the armies of John Burgoyne got stopped at the Battle of Saratoga, where the #1 American commander, General Gates, was rather inefficient, and the command had been taken over by Benedict Arnold, who was wounded at that battle. And of course, Benedict Arnold, if he hadn't become a traitor and was willing to sell out West Point to the British, could have gone down as an American hero. He fought some great battles on Lake Champlain, slowing down the British advance, giving the colonists, or the rebels, if you will, or whatever, a chance to group, get enough strength, build up enough strength to stop Burgoyne's advance and harass his supply lines, so that he realized the futility of continuing the advance and surrendered at Saratoga. And of course, this was regarded as the turning point in the American Revolution. Burgoyne's defeat brought France in on our side, and that made the difference in the end. But things are going to have to change. And 2020 is going to go down as the, if you will, the pivot year, when we went from the old to the new. And how that change is going to take place, how long it's going to take to implement it, well, that's something for us to look at in the future. Well, coming down to the present, the fella in the White House is finally coming around to the fact that, well, maybe he did lose the election. His legal team, under the leadership of Rudy Giuliani, that crazy whacked out former mayor of New York, who's nuttier than a bed bug with fleas, all of his legal challenges to the legality of the November 3rd election are being rejected. They're going to the courts, and even judges appointed by Humpty Trumpty are looking at this thing and say, hey, there's nothing illegal about it. There's been no fraud. And all of his challenges are going down the tubes. Now he threatens to take the whole thing to the Supreme Court. So we're seeing him for what he really is, and I hope many people that voted for him now regret that they did when they see what he is. Got the mentality of a 2-year-old. He lost. And instead of owning up to it, he claims falsely that he was elected. No, you haven't been elected. You've been defeated. Look at the results. But what he's trying to do is get those results overturned, and in that he will not succeed. It's only recently that he has allowed the transition from his administration to the Biden administration to take place. He resisted that for a long time. And it remains to be seen what he's going to do with the next 50 days or less that he is still president, what harm he can cause. In Time magazine, there was a letter in there from the person with a sense of humor, and he talked about Humpty Trumpty. Humpty Trumpty built a big wall. Humpty Trumpty had a great fall. All his lawyers and all his servants could not put Humpty Trumpty back together again. Well, I can see why he is upset and trying to figure out which way to go. He's also come up with the thought that maybe he could pardon himself in advance before he leaves office. He's pardoning a few of his cronies that were, well, some were in jail and some were about to go to jail, and some are under house arrest. And he's issuing some pardons, and he'll probably issue a lot more. And of course, the big question that he can't figure out, could he pardon himself in advance? Well, as yet, he hasn't been convicted of anything. I'm sure he will be. Income tax evasion, for one thing, the way he's cheated on his taxes, failed to pay them, the way he swindled other people, fraud he's committed. And I can see why he's a little bit nervous about leaving the White House. His chances are pretty good that he's going to be going within a year or two into the big house for a while. And so the question, can he pardon himself in advance? Well, you know, if you haven't been convicted of anything as yet, it's rather hard to issue a pardon, or a pardon in advance, or a pardon in abeyance, or whatever you want to call it. And if he's looking to the next president to issue him a pardon, I think he's pretty sure. He might be a stupid man, but I don't think he's dumb enough to feel that President Biden will grant him a pardon. Not after this campaign and not after the way he's acted. Will the next president, Kamala Harris, pardon him? I don't think so. I don't think so. But that is the situation now as we head into the month of December. As we also head into this month, of course, if you look around, you would say Christmas is right around the corner. The way the Christmas decorations are out early, usually not quite this early. They start out pretty much, especially in your stores and everything, where the merchants and businesses are trying to take advantage of the holiday season, the giving season. We have what we call Cyber Monday, when a lot of people are going to be ordering their Christmas gifts and their Christmas presents online. And then there's Giving Tuesday, when if you're of a charitable mind, you're supposed to give some more. Well, for this Cyber Monday, I mean, a lot of people are going to be up trying to get rid of the junk they got last year to make room for the junk they're going to get this year. But for little kids, there's still Santa Claus. For little kids, 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6, 7, there's still that spirit of Christmas, the spirit of giving. And we talk about Santa Claus, good old St. Nick. There was a St. Nicholas, you know, actually. His feast day is on December 6th. But he was Turkish. And the story is that he was a bishop, and part of his flock, there was a family with 3 daughters. And the old idea was, you know, that when a girl got married, she brought a dowry with her to her husband's family. And the story is that this family, the 3 daughters, didn't have much. In fact, didn't have enough to make a dowry. So daughter 1 gets engaged. And what's she going to do for a dowry? Well, supposedly Nicholas came along with a bag of gold and a bag of goodies, whatever it was, and provided the dowry for him. Same thing for daughter 2 and daughter 3. Well, the idea of St. Nicholas, through Christianity, spread into Western Europe. And in Germany, he became Kris Kringle. And somewhere, I'm not sure, maybe England, possibly France, Kris Kringle became St. Nicholas. And you get into Italy, Spain, that St. Nicholas became Santa Claus. And of course, a number of other traditions and holiday traditions that we'll be talking about maybe later on. You got to wonder, with the situation that's taking place, it's COVID-19, the economy taking a hit because of this disease, a lot of businesses going out of business, laying off people. You got to wonder what kind of a Christmas this is going to be for a lot of people. It's not going to be the luxurious big celebration, big parties and all that. There will be some parties, I'm sure, but not the huge number that they've had in previous years. It's probably going to be a rather laid-back Christmas for a lot of people. I know your television networks are already playing up Christmas. I think it's CBS and a number of other ones have already run the Christmas Snoopy shows, and Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and all the rest of it. I think it's to try to get people in the mood. It's going to be very, very hard to promote that mood this year. But you know, we've been through hard times before. If we go back a few years, back to the Depression of 1929, 1930, you think of Christmases we had then, during World War II especially. I remember World War II. Christmases were definitely low-key. And the reason, because we were fighting a very, very hard-fought war. We were losing people by the thousands, killed in combat or wounded in combat. In a worldwide war that we were fighting on two fronts. And Christmas was very laid back. As far as Christmas toys, a lot of them were made of wood because the metal had to go to the defense effort. And as part of Christmas, 1942 through 1945, is a prayer for victory. Most of the themes were political. And the urge was, instead of buying Christmas presents, why not buy war bonds and defense stamps? We call defense stamps. So it was a low-key holiday season. Came back with a bounce, of course, in 1945, 46 especially, when the troops came home, except those that had to do occupation duty in Japan and Germany, and they were replaced by younger recruits. We had a draft system those days where every young male was expected to spend 2 years in military service or more. And it looks like this year, Thanksgiving was, I'd say, rather low-key. There were family gatherings. There were people getting together and having parties and stuff like that. And that's the reason for the spike in COVID-19. Will we learn from Thanksgiving, or will Christmas be the same? Hopefully things will key down. People will realize that we're not going to lick this thing by violating all the suggestions that are being made for keeping it under control. And of course, New Year's, traditionally New Year's, big parties and all that, that may have to be foregone this year. Another thing that is coming up, we question, is the president's inaugural. How is Joe Biden going to be inaugurated? Will it be on the steps of the Capitol again, with huge gatherings? Or will it be like a private ceremony, maybe in the East Room of the White House? I think if there's going to be responsible leadership, we're going to have to say, well, the usual big gathering that we've had at the Capitol, and then the big meal that we have after it for the winning party and all your politicians and so forth, we're going to have to dispense with it and have a simple swearing-in ceremony in the East Room of the White House. Of course, the big question is, since Mr. Trump will be president right up to 12 noon, whether he even lets him in the door. So they may have to have that swearing-in ceremony at the Capitol building, maybe in the House of Representatives, with a limited number of people there, and see if it works that way. Because with the way this thing is spreading, and with winter coming on, when it's going to shoot right up, you're going to have to rethink the way we do things. Traditions are maybe going to have to be put aside or amended or changed. And how this is handled will be rather interesting. I think President Biden, although no plans for the inaugural have been announced as yet, I'm sure they're thinking along those lines. You know, will we take the oath of office in the White House or in the House of Representatives? Well, that remains to be seen. So with that, May Almighty God in His infinite wisdom continue to bless these United States of America. And we need it now as much as we ever have at any other time. God love you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all next week.